So, when I was about 14-ish, I saw the movie Powder for the first time, and as the film progressed, my 14-year-old brain noticed some things that, well...
Bottom line, he's a very healthy young man. In fact, with all that farm work, I'd say you're in damn fine shape. They call him Old Blue Eyes in time for the county fair.
You're supposed to be at the lake, skinny dipping with the rest of the faggots.
Something told me that I might be attracted to men. Now, before I go any further, let me just get this out of the way. I know. But for those of you who don't, in 1989, Victor Salva was convicted of sexually abusing his leading actor, Nathan Forrest Winters, who starred in the movie Clown House. Winters was 12 years old at the time. Despite Salva's conviction, he served a short jail sentence and continues making films to this day. Knowing what Salva did to these child actors, it creates another layer to Clown House that makes the viewing experience really uncomfortable. In the age of unmasking prominent artists for the atrocities they committed and holding them accountable, the question that always comes up is, should we watch their work at all? As recently as 2017, Nathan Forrest Winters commented on Victor Salva's work and the reluctance to bring up the topic of pedophilia at all.
Through our strength in our voice, others will find their own. And the more people that are willing to find their voice and to speak out about this, it goes right back to my soundbite, which is the more light we shed on these darkest of crimes, the fewer shadows there will be for them to hide. And that's really what needs to happen.
Viewing Salva's more prominent work, elements of his pedophilia are embedded in the film's language, but I also noticed elements that are present in the film that are typically viewed through an LGBTQA lens. I started wondering whether there was more going on in these films besides his desire to create trophies for other pedophiles to popple at. Winter's words, not mine.
I feel sorry for him that he's that fucked up, to be honest with you. That he thinks what he's doing is okay, and that he exploits children, and the way that he, all the little innuendos, all the dialogue, the boys half naked in their underwear, all those scenes are exploitation of his crimes. And that's what I think is sick and twisted. His films are kind of a testament to that, these are trophies for other pedophiles to watch.
Yeah.
And with most conservatives arguing that giving gay or trans people basic human rights will open the floodgates for pedophiles to get those same rights too, it can be dangerous to say that these films and other LGBTQ films are a one-to-one ratio of the queer experience. So what's the difference here? Let's explore it. It's no secret that homosexual men have been compared to pedophiles in most of history. Ronaldo Jurov writes in Look Again at Leonardo's Evangelist, there was a widely acknowledged type of homosexual relationship during the 1500s, one that always included a mature man and an adolescent boy. The younger partner was seen to combine both male and female attributes as he slowly developed into full manhood. Christian Berko wrote in their book Sexual Hierarchies, Public Status, Men, Sodomy, and Society in Spain's Golden Age that older men would typically take the dominant role while the younger partner, typically an adolescent boy aged 14 to 20, would take the passive role. Many of these older men often offered money or gifts in exchange for sexual favors. We thus encounter adult men engaging in the acceptable masculine practice of seeking sexual satisfaction from an object of desire. In this case, young adolescent males. The pursuers constantly feminized the young men and thus converted this male-to-male sexual pursuit into a mirror of male-female sexual relations. The controlling words, gifts, money, overt advances, and sometimes violence mimicked the relationships established between men and women. You could also find the same cases where the adolescent boys took on a more feminized persona to appear more desirable to the older partners. That's not to say that homosexual relationships were socially acceptable at this time. D.H. Mader and Gert Heckma write in Same-Sex Different Ages on pederasty in gay history about how the Netherlands burned men convicted of sodomy in the 1300s. Michelangelo has been speculated to have a romantic relationship with Tommaso di Cavalieri, who, according to Jade Harthus in their dissertation, was between the ages of 12 and 16. They go on by writing, "In our time, it can certainly be found incomprehensible that an old man enters into a relationship with a child and that he is also submissive. In the 16th century, however, it was not uncommon for an older man to fall prey to the charms of an attractive boy or young man. In fact, almost all sexual relations between men were of a pederastic nature at the time. Most male relationships arose between an adult male and a boy between the ages of 12 and 19. As we get closer to the present, the pederastic relationship dynamic became less socially acceptable. Despite this, you still see this kind of dynamic in films that deal with male homosexual relationships. The 1919 German film, different from the others, depicts an established violinist and his young male student who develop a romantic relationship with each other. The age gap is never really the main conflict of the film and deals more with the pressures of being gay in a heteronormative society.
Let's take the case of Jimmy Barnes. Jimmy played baseball all afternoon, and he didn't feel like walking home, so he decided to thumb a ride.
In America, films were made to paint gay men as predatory. The gay men in this film, Boys Beware, for example, depicts them as baldy middle-aged men pining after teenage boys.
He bought presents and even gave him money, but payments were expected in return. You see, Jimmy hadn't recognized Ralph's approach soon enough. When Ralph first asked Jimmy to go fishing alone, he should have discussed it with his parents or teacher.
The film equates all homosexuals to child predators. It also implies that homosexuality is something that can spread from one person to another like an illness.
What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex.
Perfect timing. What's the matter? You all right?
Huh?
Pinch a nerve?
I'm okay. Here, hold this. Trust me, I'm about to be a doctor.
Hey, come here. See, that's the problem. You're too stressed. You just gotta relax a little bit.
I am relaxing.
Not a straight body in these statues. They're all curved. Sometimes impossibly curved, and so nonchalant. Hence their ageless ambiguity. As if they're daring you to desire them.
Call Me By Your Name is one of the more recent examples of this dynamic. The difference with this example is that the story unfolds solely through the younger partner's perspective. It also establishes the sexuality of both parties being somewhat fluid. Neither is entirely straight, but not entirely gay either. The film also goes out of its way to portray the two players as having equal footing in the relationship, which, is not the most realistic depiction when it comes to most relationships of this nature.
Are you gonna hold what happened last night against me?
No.
I don't want you to regret anything. And I hate the thought that maybe I may have messed you up. I don't want either of us to pay for this.
It's not like I'm gonna tell anyone. You're not gonna be like in any trouble.
It's also one of the rare films where the parents of the teenager find out and are completely fine with the whole thing.
They know about us.
I figured. You're so lucky. My father would have carted me off to a correctional facility.
So all of these examples brought up so far were either social norms of the time or cartoonish propaganda. Call Me By Your Name, though problematic, was an attempt to humanize gay characters. So an attempt was made. How does this all tie into Victor Salva's work? Well, so I originally wasn't going to cover this movie, but I felt that I had to, since this is Salva's first feature and it is also the most overt example of what's present in all of his work. The film follows three brothers who find themselves home alone in their giant Victorian house while escaped convicts take on clown personas and terrorize the boys for the entire evening. Within the first 5 minutes, all of the boys are objectified in one way or another.
So that for the first few minutes of that movie, it's really apparent. I just watched it myself for the first time with the knowledge of everything. And just those first few minutes, it's like, wow, this is it's all right there.
I have not watched it. I actually have not been able to bring myself to watch it.
Well, within the first 5 minutes, you see All three of us in our underwear and my bare ass.
You better sit next to Jeffrey. I don't want you peeing your pants on me.
Soft hand. It is good to be soft, but dangerous too. You know what I say? And this, Casey, is your love line. Still small.
Like his pecker. You guys gonna stay here and feel each other up while I'm gone?
No. Well, you came barreling in here like a freight train. Oh, look at this mess.
There is no established homosexual relationship in this film, so the older partner is replaced by the three clowns who terrorize the children. That being said, the film doesn't necessarily advocate for any kind of humanity for sexual deviance. The characters coded as child predators are the villains of the story that the children overcome. And since Victor was in jail by the time this film premiered, it would be safe to say that this director's film career would never recover. Right? Guys? So with Clown House, you have the Predator allegory as your villain, but with Powder, Salva begs the question, what if we humanize the monster? Upon closer inspection, you'll find not only the suggestive male-to-male innuendos, but something else as well. Pay attention to what Mary Steenburgen says about 20 minutes into the film.
He doesn't seem to know what things are. I mean, things you and I take for granted. Common everyday objects, simple ideas. I just don't think he's ever been exposed to them. I mean, he's about the most well-read teenage kid you could ever meet. But in other ways, I think he's a lot like a little child.
Throughout the film, Sean Patrick Flannery portrays his character as a doe-eyed personification of innocence, while most of the town ridicules him for being different.
You're about to make me a whole lot meaner. Trust me, son, you don't want to make me mad.
Afraid. I don't make you mad, I make you afraid.
What was that?
I said that you're afraid of me.
Duncan, get on back.
There is a female love interest in the movie, but about 2/3 of the way through, she gets taken away by her dad, and is never seen again.
I'm so sorry.
And then immediately afterwards,
Why don't you take a picture, man?
this, along with various suggestions of Powder being not entirely straight, you could read this as a metaphor for the prejudice LGBTQ individuals have to go through in their lives. In another part of the film, Jeff Goldblum talks to Sean Patrick Flannery in an empty cafeteria, and the staging mixed the dialogue.
They were afraid to touch me after a while. My grandma and grandpa, they got really scared.
Why'd you touch you? Jeremy, that's not right. No way. It's not right.
This leads me to the conclusion that Victor Salva isn't humanizing the LGBTQ experience, but he's humanizing his pedophilia using LGBTQ rights rhetoric.
But in other ways, I think he's a lot like a little child.
Part of the way through the production, the producers of the film discovered Salva's criminal record. They alerted the higher-ups of the crew to keep an eye out for anything. Upon the film's release, Salva's abuse survivor Nathan Forrest Winters held a protest at the premiere.
When Powder came out and I was protesting Powder, I had several people that came up to me and said, well, you know, I'm going to go see the movie just because of this scandal. You know, like, this is why I'm going to go see this movie. You know, I wasn't planning on it before, but after hearing what you had to say, now I'm going to go see the movie.
Surely after this PR nightmare, executives would grow wise and not hire people like this again. Alright, so I guess I have a confession to make. Jeepers Creepers is actually kind of a good screenplay. Not a single page is wasted, and everything in the writing is used to further the plots, the characters, or the world that the film lives in. That being said, the film is also deeply homophobic.
He was standing there at your car, sniffing that laundry. Looked like he was liking it too.
Sergio Fernando Juarez writes in Creeper Boogeyman Cultural Narratives of Gay as Monstrous that the villain in this film, the Creeper, works in a manner which continues dominant narratives of queer sexuality as criminal, violent, deviant, and monstrous. These dominant narratives also frame queer sexuality as a threat to the community and the self by linking it to both pedophilia and impending death. This tendency to depict gay sexuality as monstrous in part derives from how American conservative communities have framed gay sexuality at times as something barely to be tolerated, while at other times as criminal behavior. This isn't something new in the world of film. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has done this, Silence of the Lambs has done this, and Jeepers Creepers is no different. The Creeper mostly presents as male and almost exclusively seeks out men as victims. As Juarez summarizes Harry Benshoff's writing in this topic, the 3 topic areas of heterosexual fears include 1. Gay sexuality as a threat to the individual, 2. Homosexuality as a threat to the others, and 3. Gay sexuality as a threat to community. The film's climax brings this point home by having Patricia Belcher literally pray the gay away.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy...
And Gina Phillips tried to reason with the Creeper while the visual metaphor of the patriarchy remained poised with guns.
Take me. You don't want him. You don't want him. Whatever you want, you can take it from me.
Please don't turn my brother gay, Mr. Creeper, sir. Homophobia aside, this film is actually the least overt with its underlying themes of pedophilia. But they're still there. You have an ancient evil who takes young impressionable boys and devours parts of their bodies to remain alive. The Creeper is a visual analogy to the conservative mindset of homosexuals, that we prey on young people to turn them to the dark side of the rainbow. And to be clear, homosexuality and pedophilia are not the same thing.
I've always loved women. And I just had to realize that, it's just not there. I'm not gay. But it was still something that was in the back of my mind for many years. It wasn't until my early 20s that I truly started to let that fear or concern die, and just lay it to rest. I'm one of those guys. I'm very comfortable with my sexuality. My feminine side is developed. I don't have a problem giving hugs to my bros or telling them that I love them. And that's what I really had to discover, was that just because I love my bros or I hug them doesn't mean that I want to have sex with them.
I never would have guessed that Mr. Horton was, gay.
Well, he's not, Willis. That's the common fallacy about child molesters. They're not gay. They're only interested in little boys or little girls, not adults.
You start thinking that all homosexuals are pedophiles. A guy's gay, or he's a pedophile. I have to watch out for him. He may try to get me or something.
People should get this clear. These people are predators. They go after young boys, and they do it for their own reasons. So this has got nothing to do with being gay. This has got to be because they're evil people, and they particularly pick on people who they know will be victims.
To give credit where credit is due, all of the characters in this film are established to be at least over the age of 18. Perhaps Salva has finally learned his lesson and will not cover films that deal with underage.
Now, or kiss our tail. Out for blood, we're lean and mean. Venom County's death machine. Venom Phantoms, wings of steel. Venom Phantoms, strike like lightning from the sky. Breathing out our venom.
How long can they keep this up? Forever. They have a fight song with the word cock in it.
The sequel picks up where the first left off. It takes place over the course of the final day that the Creeper hunts for its victims before going to sleep for 23 years. Along with the homoerotic imagery that's an established staple in Salva's films, there are characters who are also rumored to be gay.
You know what the story is on your scars there, right?
No, tell me.
Got into a fight when you snuck into a bar.
So?
A gay bar, bro. You do know what they call you, don't you, Izzy?
That's my name.
Or isn't he?
The film opens with the first victim being an actual child, and the majority of the film's action takes place in the middle of an empty highway while the Creeper preys on a bunch of teenagers trapped on a school bus.
What the hell does it want?
This film goes a step further by confirming that the creeper is not a thing that can be killed.
It doesn't matter. You can't kill it. Look, you can't stop it. This will never be over. It doesn't matter what you do. It'll be back. It isn't dead.
The movie ends with the message that sexual deviance cannot be destroyed, but it can be kept at bay.
You waiting for something?
About 3 more days. Give or take a day or 2.
Despite the protests and the outcry throughout Salva's career, he still manages to make films. As of April of 2021, he has 2 new films lined up in pre-production. It's clear that Victor Salva isn't going away anytime soon. In fact, a lot of filmmakers with similar scandals tend to keep finding work. Woody Allen made films for years after his abuse scandal in the 90s, Roman Polanski evaded his statutory rape charge by fleeing to Europe, and Harvey Weinstein has only just now faced consequences for his sexual abuse scandals. So why does this keep happening?
It takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage and self-will to not be intimidated by the beast that is Hollywood.
I told him that I would not go to bed with him, to which he responded, "Well then, just don't worry about going into work tomorrow morning."
It's why people don't report, because they know that even if they are believed, they're afraid that something will happen to their kid's career.
Like, I mean, that was something that Victor used to tell me, is like, if you tell anybody, you know, you're not going to see me anymore, you're not going to be able to act anymore. And, you know, so again, you know, they're using this against their victims to get what they want. It's just a form of manipulation.
The victim has chosen to remain anonymous all along in order to continue to work. It's unheard of that a child would be able to step forward at the time of their abuse when they're still a minor and continue to work afterward. I can't think of a single example where that's happened.
Robert T. Mueller, Robert A. Caldwell, and John E. Hunter wrote about victim blaming in their academic article, Factors Predicting the Blaming of Victims of Physical Child Abuse or Rape, and more notably about the just world theory. Lerner's 1980 just world theory asserted that people generally believe that the world is just and fair. It is difficult for individuals to accept the arbitrariness which characterizes the world. Instances in which good things happen to bad people or good people suffer threatens the conception of a just world. Individuals respond to such inequities by altering their perception of the victim, so that the victim is devalued and blamed for the misfortune. The 2015 documentary An Open Secret discusses the film industry's problem with harboring pedophiles. Rory Carroll wrote about the film by saying, "The film died upon release in 2015. There was no theatrical release to speak of, no television deal, no video-on-demand distribution. It did not seem to matter that it was directed by an Oscar-nominated director, Amy Berg, or that it uncovered damning evidence of sexual abuse of teenage boys by figures in the film industry. There was nowhere to see it," said Lauren Hayes, the film's writer. "I don't think it impacted at all. Nobody saw it. We released a film that didn't seem to exist." History and conservative American rhetoric has lumped pedophilia and homosexuality into the same category. And as long as the film industry refuses to address their seedy underbelly, filmmakers like Victor Salva, Woody Allen, and Roman Polanski will find more work. In Salva's case, he will continue to use LGBTQ rhetoric to connect it to pedophilia. And we rinse and repeat. It's like a vicious cycle. How do we stop it?
And that's really the key to a victim becoming a survivor, is being able to find your voice and realize that you have absolutely no responsibility or any reason to be carrying this shackle of shame behind you. And that's really what damages these kids the most, is this secret, this dirty little secret. And then once you start telling the secret, it's not so dark and dirty anymore. And then once you start telling and you realize that, then the next thing you know, you've got all these other people out there that are saying, look, I went through the same thing. And that one becomes, you know, many. And that's really what's going to empower all of us, is once we start banding together and calling out our victimizers and saying, look, this is not mine to carry anymore. You know, that's, for me, that was my transition from victim to survivors, when I realized that I am not going to carry this shame anymore. This is not mine. Victor can have it back.